The fall and the first words. Jason sat on his porch, staring at the night sky. The stars were bright, scattered across the darkness like tiny diamonds. The air was cool, and the only sound was the distant hoot of an owl. It was a quiet night, peaceful, just like every other night on his farm. Then, out of nowhere, a streak of fire tore through the sky. Jason stood up, his heart pounding. The fiery object raced downward, leaving a bright trail behind it. Within seconds, it crashed into the north field, shaking the ground with a deafening boom. The explosion lit up the night for a brief moment before fading into darkness again. Jason grabbed his flashlight and ran toward the crash site. His boots sank into the soft dirt as he sprinted through the field. His mind raced with questions. A meteor, a plane, something else. As he got closer, he saw a smoking crater in the middle of his field. Steam rose from the ground, and the grass around it was burned. Jason's breath caught in his throat when he noticed something metallic in the center. It wasn't a rock. It was a pod. His hands trembled as he stepped closer. The pod was smooth and silver, shaped like an egg. Strange symbols glowed on its surface, pulsing like a heartbeat. It looked advanced, not from Earth. Suddenly, the pod hissed, and a thin line split down the middle. Jason jumped back, gripping his flashlight like a weapon. The pod's door slowly opened, revealing a figure inside. It was a woman. She stumbled forward, falling to her knees. Her skin was a soft silver blue, and her long dark hair was tangled. Her golden eyes met Jason's, filled with pain and exhaustion. She wore a tight dark suit with cuts and burns on her arms. She was injured. Jason took a cautious step forward. "Hey, are you okay?" The woman gasped for air, struggling to stay upright. She looked around in confusion, then locked her gaze on Jason again. Her lips parted, and she whispered something in a strange, musical language. Jason shook his head. I don't understand." She took a shaky breath, then tried again, her voice weak but urgent. "You are my champion." Jason's body tensed. He wasn't sure if he heard her right. Champion. What did she mean? Before he could ask, a deep, mechanical roar echoed across the sky. Jason looked up. A dark, triangular ship hovered in the clouds, its red lights scanning the ground. The air grew heavy, charged with energy. The woman's eyes widened in fear. She grabbed Jason's hand with surprising strength. "We must go. Now." Jason hesitated. He had a million questions, but he could see the terror in her face. The ship descended, its engines growing louder. A bright spotlight flashed onto them. Jason's heart pounded. He didn't know who she was or why she called him a champion. But he knew one thing. They were in danger. The enemy hunts us. The night air buzzed with tension. The giant triangular ship hovered above the field, its dark metal frame barely visible against the sky. Only the red searchlights gave away its presence, sweeping across the land like a predator hunting its prey. Jason's pulse pounded in his ears. His mind screamed at him to run, but his feet refused to move. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a farmer with a simple life. But tonight, everything had changed. The alien woman clutched his hand tightly. Despite her injuries, her grip was strong, her golden eyes burning with urgency. "We must leave. They will not hesitate to kill us." Her voice was soft yet commanding. Jason swallowed hard. "Who are they?" She winced, pressing a hand against her side. The thin stream of blue blood dripped between her fingers. "Hunters. My kind call them the Draknir. They do not take prisoners." The name sent a chill down Jason's spine. He didn't know what the Draknir were, but he could tell they weren't friendly. The ship's spotlight passed over the crater, then stopped. The ground trembled. A deep mechanical voice echoed from the ship. "Target located. Deploy ground units." Jason barely had time to react before a hatch opened on the underside of the ship. From the darkness, 3 figures dropped down, landing with a metallic thud. They weren't human. Their armor was black and sleek, Their eyes glowed red, and their arms carried strange, curved weapons that hissed with energy. Jason's breath hitched. They looked like demons made of steel. The woman hissed something in her language and pulled Jason toward the trees. He didn't argue. He ran. Behind them, the alien soldiers moved like ghosts, barely making a sound as they pursued. The air crackled, and suddenly, VZZZZ, a blast of blue energy struck the tree beside Jason, burning a hole straight through it. Smoke filled the air. He stumbled, barely catching himself. The woman didn't stop. She spun mid-run, raised her arm, and fired back. A bright white pulse shot from her wrist, hitting one of the armored figures square in the chest. Sparks flew, and the soldier staggered back. Jason gaped. She wasn't just some lost traveler. She was a warrior. But there were still two more chasing them. Faster, she snapped. Jason pushed his legs harder, dodging between the trees. The forest was thick, but their enemies were gaining ground. He could hear the faint click-click-click of their metal boots against the earth. Then the woman stumbled. She gasped, gripping her side, her strength faltering. Her wounds were slowing her down. Jason cursed under his breath. He couldn't leave her. Without thinking, he grabbed her arm and pulled her over his shoulder. "Hold on," he grunted. For a second, she tensed as if she wasn't used to being helped, but she didn't argue. Jason ran. Another energy blast sizzled past his head. Too close. He had to think fast. Then he saw it, a deep trench ahead, filled with thick underbrush. If they could reach it, they might be able to hide. Almost there, Jason panted. The woman, still slumped over his shoulder, suddenly whispered something. Her bracelet blinked green. Before Jason could ask, the ground beneath them vanished. For a brief second, they were falling. Jason braced for impact. But instead of hitting the ground, they vanished into a shimmering portal. The last thing he saw was the glowing red eyes of the Draconeer standing at the edge of the trench, scanning the area where Jason and the woman had just disappeared. A fight for survival. The world shifted. One moment, Jason was falling, his stomach twisting in freefall. The next, he slammed into hard metal flooring. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, leaving him gasping. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, beep, beep. A soft, mechanical alarm pulsed around him. Dim blue lights flickered to life. The air smelled different, sterile, metallic, and faintly burnt. Jason groaned, pushing himself up. The alien woman lay beside him, breathing heavily. Sweat glistened on her silver-blue skin, and her hand still clutched her wounded side. He turned his head, trying to process where they were. It looked like a ship's interior, but smaller than he expected. A cockpit. A transport bay. The walls were lined with curved control panels covered in alien symbols. He coughed, trying to catch his breath. "Where are we?" The woman exhaled sharply, forcing herself to sit up. Her golden eyes scanned the room, then focused on a floating orb-like device blinking above them. "Safe, for now," she muttered. Jason didn't feel very safe. His heart still pounded from the chase, and his legs ached from running. What the hell was that? What just happened? The woman pressed something on her wrist, and a holographic screen flickered to life in front of her. It displayed a star map, but Jason couldn't make sense of it. She ignored his question. Instead, she clenched her jaw and whispered, "That was close." Jason frowned. "Close? You call that close? We were almost fried alive." The woman glanced at him. Her eyes softened for a brief moment, then hardened again. "If I hadn't activated the jump beacon, you would be dead." Jason ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. "Okay, fine. Thanks for saving me." Again. She didn't reply. Instead, she touched a glowing circular panel on the wall. The metal surface rippled like water, and a storage compartment opened. From inside, she pulled out a small silver cylinder and pressed it to her side. A faint hiss filled the air as the device emitted a soft blue light, sealing her wounds. Jason watched, fascinated. "What are you?" he finally asked. She let out a tired sigh. "My name is Lyra. I am a survivor. A fugitive." Jason's stomach twisted. "Fugitive? You mean you're on the run?" Lyra's expression darkened. "The Drakenir hunt my kind. They wiped out my people. I am the last of the Valari royal bloodline." Jason blinked. "Royalty?" He stared at her, unsure what to say. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "And you, Jason?" He swallowed. "Me? What?" She exhaled. "You're the reason I'm here." Jason stiffened. "Excuse me?" Liara stepped closer, eyes glowing faintly. "Before my home fell, my ancestors spoke of a prophecy, a human warrior, a protector, a champion who would rise when all hope was lost." Jason laughed nervously. "Okay, hold on. I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm not a champion. I'm just a farmer." Liara tilted her head as if studying him. "And yet you carried me when I was weak. You ran toward danger instead of away." Jason opened his mouth to argue, then stopped, because she was right. Somewhere deep inside, a strange pulse of energy stirred in his chest. He could still remember the moment in the field when the Drakenir attacked, how his skin had tingled, how for a brief second something inside him felt awake. Before he could respond, a sudden bang rattled the walls. The ship lurched violently, sending Jason tumbling into a console. Sparks spat from the ceiling. A red light flashed rapidly, and a robotic voice blared. "Warning. Any Navy lock element DTECTED." Lyara's face darkened. "They found us." Jason's stomach dropped. "How?" "We teleported." Liara cursed under her breath, gripping the control panel. Asterisk, asterisk. The Drakenir never give up. Asterisk, asterisk. She jabbed a button, and a holographic screen showed their ship, floating in the middle of empty space. And right behind them, a massive Drakenir warship loomed, its cannons glowing with charged plasma. Jason's throat went dry. "Tell me we have a way out." Liara clenched her teeth. "Not yet, but we do have something they don't." Jason frowned. "And that is?" She turned to him, her eyes fierce. "You." Before Jason could react, the warship's plasma cannons fired. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Liara grabbed Jason's wrist. "Time to see if you really are a champion." The escape and the revelation. The ship shook violently, sending Jason crashing into the control panel. Sparks flew as warning alarms screamed through the cockpit. Liara gritted her teeth, gripping the controls with steady hands. Outside, the Drakenir warship loomed like a predator, its cannons glowing with deadly plasma. Jason forced himself up, his heart racing. "I thought you said we were safe." Liara ignored him, fingers flying across the glowing holographic controls. "I need 5 seconds to activate the hyperdrive. Keep them off us." Jason blinked. "Keep them off us? How exactly do you want me to?" Boom. A direct hit. The ship lurched sideways, and Jason was thrown against the wall. A metallic voice echoed. "Warning. Shields failing." Liara cursed in her alien language. "They're targeting our engines. If they disable them, we're dead." Jason struggled to his feet. "What do I do? I don't know how to fight in space." Liara's golden eyes snapped toward him. "Yes, you do." Jason's pulse pounded. Something flickered in her gaze, like she knew something he didn't. "Take the second control panel," she ordered, pointing to a circular holopad to his right. "Focus on it. Don't think, just feel." Jason hesitated, but the ship rattled under another blast, and he had no choice. He lunged forward, placing his hands on the pad. Immediately, something clicked. A wave of heat rushed through his body. The holographic symbols rearranged themselves, responding to his touch. The ship's side cannons came online. Jason barely had time to react before his instincts took over. A targeting screen flashed across his vision. He saw the Draknir fighter drones swarming outside, their sleek black bodies circling like vultures. Without thinking, his hands moved. BZZZD. Boom. A white-hot energy blast ripped through space, hitting one of the enemy ships dead center. The drone exploded in a shower of flames. Jason's eyes widened. I hit it. Liara smirked. Good. Now do it again. Jason didn't need to be told twice. His fingers glided over the controls, and the ship responded instantly, as if it had been waiting for him. He dodged an incoming missile. He locked onto another drone. He fired. Boom, boom, boom. 3 more enemies burst into fireballs. Jason felt the power surging through him. He wasn't just reacting. He was anticipating. It was like something deep inside him had awakened. Liara stole a glance at him, her expression unreadable. It's you. It really is you. Jason clenched his jaw. What are you talking about? Before she could answer, the warship's main cannon began to glow. Liara's face hardened. Hyperdrive is ready. Hold on. She slammed a lever forward. The ship lurched violently, the stars outside stretching into thin white lines. And then, silence. The Draknir ship was gone. Jason collapsed into the chair, panting. Holy shit. Liara let out a slow breath. We made it. The tension in the air finally eased. The cockpit was dimly lit, the only sound being the quiet hum of the engines. Jason wiped the sweat from his forehead. Okay, now you're going to explain. Right now. Liara met his gaze. She seemed to hesitate, as if choosing her words carefully. Then she spoke. You are not just a farmer, Jason. Jason frowned. Yeah, I keep hearing that, but I'd love an explanation. Liara walked over, placing a hand on the glowing console. The Valeri people, the ones I was born from. We were the last race capable of wielding the celestial force. It's an ancient energy, older than the stars themselves. Jason exhaled. And let me guess, the Draknir wanted it. Liara nodded. They destroyed my world trying to take it. I was sent away as a child, hidden among the stars, waiting for the day the champion would rise. Jason leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. And you think that's me? Liara's expression was firm. I don't think, Jason. I know. Jason scoffed. You're crazy. But deep down, he wasn't so sure. His mind flashed back to the moment he touched the controls. The way the ship responded to him. The way his body had known what to do without training. Something inside him had changed. Liara studied him carefully. The power is inside you. It has always been. And now that the Draknir have seen what you can do, they won't stop coming. Jason ran a hand through his hair. His life had been simple just a day ago. Now he was being hunted by space warlords and piloting an alien ship like some action movie hero. He let out a tired laugh. So what now? Liara walked to the window, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. Now we find the last of my people. Jason sighed, shaking his head. Great. No pressure. Liara glanced back, her lips curving into the faintest smirk. I told you, you're my champion. Jason wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified. The test of the champion. The silence of space stretched before them, endless and unbroken. Stars glittered like shards of glass in the void, but Jason barely noticed. His mind was still spinning. Champion. Power. The Draknir hunting them. It was too much. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't special. He was just Jason, a farmer from Earth. Yet, when he had touched the ship's controls, something had woken inside him. A strange instinct. A connection. Like the ship had been waiting for him. He turned to Liara. She sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers flying over the controls as the ship glided toward an unknown destination. Her golden eyes flickered with thought, as if she was debating something. Jason exhaled. So, where are we going? Lara didn't look up. To a place where you can prove yourself. Jason frowned. Prove myself. She finally turned, her expression unreadable. If you truly are the champion, you must awaken your power. And if you fail? A long pause. Jason raised an eyebrow. If I fail, what? Lyra's voice was quiet. Then we're both dead. A planet lost to time. The ship emerged from hyperspace, and Jason's breath caught. Below them stretched a crimson planet, its surface cracked like dry earth, its sky swirling with thick, golden clouds. Lightning flashed in the distance, arcing across the atmosphere like veins of fire. A single structure stood in the wasteland below, a massive stone temple, ancient and worn by time. Jason leaned forward. What is this place? Lyra's gaze remained fixed on the temple. The last sanctuary of my people. The place where the first champion once trained. Jason glanced at her. Wait. First champion? Lyra nodded. Thousands of years ago, a human wielded the celestial force and fought alongside my ancestors. He was the first and only one of his kind to unlock its power. Jason scoffed. So, what? You think I'm his reincarnation or something? Lyra didn't smile. No, but I believe you may be the only one left who can control the same power. Jason sighed, rubbing his temples. Great, so now I have to pass some ancient warrior test. Let me guess, giant stone doors, cryptic messages, and traps that try to kill me. Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smirk, something like that. The ship descended, kicking up dust as it landed outside the temple. Jason took a deep breath and stepped out. The air was heavy, thick with something he couldn't describe. It wasn't just heat, it was energy. A deep hum pulsed in his bones, in his chest. Lyra gestured toward the tall stone doorway. Carved symbols glowed faintly, shifting as if alive. The test begins inside, she said. Jason hesitated. And you're sure this is the best plan? Lyra crossed her arms. Would you rather wait for the Draknir to catch us? Jason sighed. Fair point. Then, the temple doors creaked open on their own. Jason froze. Lyra didn't react. She simply walked forward. Jason swallowed hard and followed her inside. The test begins. The interior of the temple was vast and endless, its walls covered in glowing blue runes. The air crackled with an unseen force, making Jason's skin tingle. The deeper they walked, the more Jason felt something stirring inside him. Like a heartbeat, a whisper, a calling. They reached a circular chamber, empty except for a raised platform in the center. Atop it stood a single object, a floating crystalline sphere, humming with power. Jason exhaled. Let me guess. That's the test. Lyra nodded. Touch it, and the temple will judge you. Jason took a step forward, but suddenly, a deep voice rumbled through the chamber. Who dares claim the power of the Velari? Jason's blood ran cold. The air shifted, shadows peeled from the walls, forming into tall, armored figures with glowing eyes. Ghosts? Guardians? Jason wasn't sure, but they looked dangerous. Lyra stepped back, her hand resting near her weapon. Prove yourself, Jason. Jason swallowed. Oh, great. The figures raised their hands. Suddenly, the room exploded into chaos. One of the shadows lunged at Jason, moving impossibly fast. Instinct took over. Jason dodged, barely, then threw up his hands. A shockwave of white energy erupted from his palms, blasting the shadow backward. The chamber shook, the runes on the walls pulsing brighter. Jason gasped, staring at his hands. What the hell? Lyra's eyes widened. You're waking up. But the shadows weren't finished. More of them surged forward. Jason moved without thinking. He ducked, twisted, and struck out with his hands. This time, a streak of light shot forward, cutting through the attackers. The energy wasn't just coming from him, it was responding to him. He could feel it now. This power was his. The last shadow dissolved into mist, and silence filled the chamber once more. Jason stood there, chest rising and falling, his hand still glowing faintly. The crystalline sphere floated toward him. Jason reached out, and as soon as his fingers brushed its surface, a wave of visions flooded his mind. He saw flashes of the past, a great war, the first champion, the fall of Lyra's people, and the Draknir's plan to wipe out the last survivors. Then one final image, himself, standing at the front of a great battle, his hands ablaze with light. The visions vanished. Jason stumbled back, breathless. He knew the truth now. Lyra stepped forward. "What did you see?" Jason clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "They're coming." Lyra's expression hardened. "Then we prepare." Jason turned back toward the temple doors, his body still buzzing with power. He had a choice now. Stay the man he was, or become the champion he was meant to be. Jason took a deep breath and stepped forward. The final war begins. The low hum filled the air, vibrating through Jason's bones. The temple was alive now, responding to the energy inside him. The ancient runes on the walls pulsed with light, casting shifting shadows across the stone floor. Jason stood in the center of the chamber, his hands still faintly glowing. The visions had faded, but the weight of their meaning still pressed against his mind. The Draknir were coming, and he was the only one who could stop them. Lyra studied him carefully. "Your power is awakening faster than I expected." Jason exhaled, still trying to make sense of everything. "I don't even understand what this power is. It just happens." Lyra nodded. "Because you are connected to the celestial force. It's not something you control, it's something you become." Jason frowned. "Right. That's totally not vague at all." Lyra smirked slightly, but then turned serious. "We don't have time to train you properly. The moment you touch the core, the Draknir felt it. They will come." Jason felt his stomach twist. "How long do we have?" Lyra turned toward the temple entrance, pressing her fingertips against the stone. The air shimmered, and a holographic star map flickered into view. A red blip blinked, moving toward their location. "Less than an hour." Jason clenched his fists. "So, what do we do?" Lyra's eyes burned with determination. "We fight. The last stand begins." The wind howled across the cracked red desert as dark shadows filled the sky. The Draknir fleet had arrived. Jason and Lyra stood atop the temple's outer walls, looking up as dozens of sleek black warships descended like vultures. Their engines roared, sending ripples of heat across the ground. Jason's hands tightened around the Valeri energy staff Lyra had given him. It hummed with power, its silver blade extending with a flickering pulse of white fire. "I hope you know how to use that," Lyra muttered. Jason rolled his shoulders. "I guess we're about to find out." The first Draknir dropships touched the ground, their hatches hissing open. Then they came. Tall, armored warriors in sleek black plating. Their glowing red eyes locked onto Jason, sensing something different about him. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Jason swallowed hard. Well, they look pissed. Lyra unsheathed her twin blades. Good. So am I. Then, the battlefield erupted. The Draknir charged forward like a storm. Jason barely had time to react before the first enemy lunged at him, its blade slicing through the air. Instinct took over. Jason moved faster than he thought possible, twisting aside and bringing his staff down in a sweeping arc. The energy blade cracked against the enemy's armor, sending sparks flying. The warrior staggered, but another took its place. Jason blocked an incoming strike, spinning into a counterattack. His movements felt fluid, natural, like he had done this before. The celestial force was guiding him. Lyra fought beside him, a blur of silver and gold, cutting through enemies with deadly precision. But there were too many. The Draknir swarmed the temple walls, overwhelming the ancient structure with sheer numbers. The sky flashed as their warships fired plasma rounds, shaking the ground with explosions. Jason barely dodged a blast, rolling to the side before striking down another warrior. We can't hold them forever. Liara gritted her teeth. We don't need to. We just need to delay them. Jason blinked. Delay them for what? A new roar split the air, a deep guttural sound that sent shivers down Jason's spine. The Draknir stopped. Even in battle, they hesitated, stepping back as a massive shadow descended from the warship above. A figure dropped from the sky. It landed with a deafening boom, dust and rock exploding outward. When the dust cleared, Jason's blood ran cold. A Draknir twice the size of the others stood before him. Its armor was heavier, black with streaks of crimson. Its 4 burning red eyes locked onto Jason with terrifying intensity. Jason exhaled. I'm guessing that's their leader. Liara's expression was grim. That's Varrak Thul, warlord of the Draknir. Jason gulped. Great. Any chance he just wants to talk. Varrak Thul unsheathed a massive energy blade, its edges humming with a deadly violet glow. Liara smirked. Not likely. Varrak Thul took a step forward, his voice a deep, inhuman growl. You are the champion. Jason tightened his grip on his weapon. That's what they keep telling me. The warlord tilted his head. I expected more. Jason sighed. Yeah, me too. Then, Varrak Thul attacked. The champion rises. The air crackled with energy. The battlefield fell into silence as Jason faced Varrak Thul, the monstrous warlord of the Draknir. The warlord's massive energy blade hummed, glowing with an eerie violet fire. His crimson eyes burned through Jason, assessing him, judging him. Jason tightened his grip on the celestial staff. His hands were steady, but his heart pounded. This was it, the final test. Varrak Thul's voice rumbled like a thunderstorm. You are not ready, human. Jason forced a smirk. Yeah, let's find out. Then the warlord struck. Jason barely dodged as Varrak Thul moved with terrifying speed. The massive blade sliced through the air, shattering the stone ground where Jason had stood a second ago. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the battlefield. Dust and debris exploded outward. Jason rolled, coming up fast, and swung his staff. A burst of white fire erupted from the blade, slamming into Varrak Thul's armor. The warlord staggered, but only for a moment. Jason's chest tightened. He had put everything into that strike, and it barely made a dent. Varrak Thul let out a deep, guttural chuckle. Pathetic. Then he came at Jason again. Faster, stronger. Jason barely blocked the next hit, but the force sent him skidding backward. His arms shook from the impact. His bones felt like they would break. This wasn't a fight. This was survival. Liara shouted from the temple ruins, slashing through enemy soldiers. Jason, you have to use the force. You have to let it in. Jason gritted his teeth. I'm trying. Varrak Thul raised his sword for a final blow. You are no champion. Jason's mind screamed. His body ached. Every instinct told him to run. But then, he heard it. A whisper, a voice not his own. Let go. Jason's eyes widened. The celestial force wasn't something to control. It wasn't a weapon. It was something greater. It was alive. Jason stopped fighting it. He let the energy flow through him. And suddenly, the world changed. Everything slowed. Jason could see the movement of energy in the air, the flow of power through Varrak Thul's blade. He could sense the warlord's next attack before it even happened. He felt weightless. And for the first time, he truly understood. Jason raised his staff, not as a weapon, but as a conduit. Varrak Thul swung down, and Jason simply moved. He twisted, stepping to the side effortlessly, his body guided by the celestial force itself. The warlord's blade missed by inches, slamming into the ground with a deafening boom. Jason didn't hesitate. He turned, raised his hand, and unleashed a surge of white fire. The battlefield ignited. A shockwave of pure energy exploded from Jason's palms, ripping through the air and slamming into Verakthol's chest. The warlord's armor cracked. For the first time, Verakthol roared in pain. Jason didn't stop. He stepped forward, swinging his staff in a glowing arc. A pulse of light shot through Verakthol, piercing his form with unstoppable force. The warlord staggered, dropping to one knee. His 4 red eyes flickered, confused, afraid. Jason stood over him. The energy crackled around his hands. He could end it now. Verakthol's voice was weak, disbelieving. Impossible. Jason exhaled. Yeah, I get that a lot. Then, with one final strike, he drove his staff into the warlord's chest. A final burst of pure white light erupted, and Verakthol was gone. His body disintegrated into glowing ash, carried away by the cosmic wind. The Draknir army stood frozen in shock. Their warlord, the unkillable conqueror, was dead. Then, one by one, they began to retreat. Their ships rose into the sky, fleeing back into the void. The battle was over. Jason collapsed to his knees, gasping. His hands still tingled, his vision still buzzed with light. Liara ran to him, kneeling beside him. Her eyes were bright, not with fear, but with awe. Jason managed a weak grin. So, did I pass the test? Liara laughed, shaking her head. You didn't pass the test, Jason. She touched his shoulder gently. You became the champion. Jason let out a breathless chuckle. No pressure, huh? Liara's expression softened. The war isn't over. But today, you saved my people. Jason looked up at the stars. He had spent his life as just a simple farmer on Earth. Now, he was something more. He was Jason, the last champion. And his story was only just beginning. The end, for now.